How can some of the listeners that maybe just want to get into running, what are some suggestions that you have for somebody that wants to try to get into running, they just really don't have much proficiency with it?
Yeah, I think running as a skill, like a lot of the stuff, this won't be news to your listeners, but it's like nasal breathing, minimal shoes, seeing running as something that you're inefficient at, not something that you suck at. Because it's like, looking at yourself as a runner, it's like you might not be very good at running, but there's a lot that goes into that. There is the aerobic development, but I mean, you guys know you're not going to develop skill and aerobic capacity at the same time. It's just not a thing. Like if you're not skilled enough to crank out reps with it, you're not going to get aerobic capacity. And if you crank out reps with something that you're not skilled at, you're going to get hurt.
Yeah.
And so something like running, something like 30 seconds or a minute of jogging and keeping it gentle and then walking till you can recover yourself and doing that, I think that's a really, really good place to start to build proficiency at this activity, right? And I think people are very harsh because they think there's too many boxers that are like, I ran 8 miles a day or whatever it is. And they're thinking in terms of calories or miles or things like that, and not in terms of developing proficiency at this new skill. Because once you develop the skill, you can run forever. And especially if you're coming into it out of the gates with, I'm going to engage with my body mindfully and see how this new, what is this like? What's the texture of my chest when I go run at this pace or whatever. It's always, it's funny to me as someone who's such an advocate and practitioner of very slow, mellow training, to be coming down onto the river path in town and seeing the person who is running faster than I am when they're running, and then they're breaking it up with walking because they can't sustain that. Like, if you're willing to run 11-minute miles with me, we could probably just like shoot the breeze and jog on this river path and talk about how pretty the snow is on the rocks with the water going by it, and really just kind of get weird.
Yeah.
I think there's something really cool to that. If you see running as a way to generate enough body heat this time of the year, in the winter, to generate enough body heat to appreciate being outdoors without bundling all up or feeling cold, that's a pretty cool entry point, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you play with the game that you're playing instead of like force against force, this kind
almost
of
like you're just out on a walk and you're like, fuck, it's cold, and you just run until you get a little bit warm.
Yeah.
Right?
And where does that where does the heat start? Go outside, feel that you're cold, and then wait till you feel the heat changing. And where does that start in your body? Where does that feel? What is this like? And going at this with this idea of curiosity, obviously all this like biohacky stuff, it's curiosity to me. It's having something new to play with. And I'm the best client for myself because it's like I'll get some crazy harebrained idea and I'll do it every day for 6 months and find out.
Yeah.
And I think if the average person brought that kind of energy into whatever it is they're looking at for fitness, I think they would adhere to it longer, and I think they'd have more fun because we tend to think about this like very mean, you're defaulting to not loving yourself, right? You're defaulting to like, there's something wrong with me and I need to like burn these calories so that I can eat a few hundred calories extra and still lose weight or whatever it is. Whereas if you think about it, you have a hard time stopping kids from running, right? I mean, I'm sure they're getting more docile as time goes by. I'm sure it's easier now, but if you could run like giddily, if you could be giddy when you were running, you think about like your older brother or like somebody chasing you and like scooping you up, or like, the lifeguard looking away and you're sprinting across the pool deck to get over there. If you could run like that and not get tired, I don't think you'd find time to do all that much else, right?
Mm-hmm.
It would be great. And so I think if you're coming at it with that from the get-go, how do I capture more of that? And I think a lot of it is like bare feet or minimal footwear is an awesome place to start because you feel the ground and it makes you feel more playful and it makes you feel more giddy and get out there and it puts you into that mind space of how do I interact with this surface? What does it feel like to run on gravel? I like gravel's something I love, man.
Power Project family, if you're trying to increase your muscle mass, if you're trying to lose body fat, if you're trying to stick to your nutrition plan, if you're trying to get fit, pretty much if there's anything you're trying to do for your health, we know that sleep is the biggest determining factor to help you get from point A to point B. That's why we've been sleeping on 8 Sleep mattresses for probably more than 2 years now. And the main reason is the technology behind the Pod Pro. Now, the Pod Pro is like the Tesla of beds. It will change its temperature based off of how you're sleeping during the night. And if you have a partner that's sleeping on the other side, they could have their own temperature settings. We all sleep hot here, and I used to wake up in a puddle of my own sweat.
Gross.
That doesn't happen anymore because of the 8 Sleep mattress, and I've been getting the best sleep of my life. Now, if you don't want to replace your mattress, you can just get the Pod Pro cover, and you can put that over your current mattress to get all the benefits of 8 Sleep. But if you also need to replace your old nasty mattress, you can get the Pod Pro cover and the 8 Sleep mattress. Andrew, how can they get it?
Yes, you guys got to head over to 8sleep.com/powerproject, and you guys will automatically receive $150 off of your order. Again, 8sleep.com/powerproject. Links to them down in the description, as well as the podcast show notes.
Okay.
You know, I think a lot of these runs, you know, especially like 100-mile runs and things like that. I mean, maybe there was some sick bastards out there that had the idea of like these are going to be like races, like we're gonna race 100 miles. But for the most part, people are probably just like, this is just kind of a cool test to see if someone can run 50 miles. And now we're in a spot where almost anybody that signs up, even just for like a marathon, they're thinking about their time. They're not thinking about like finishing. And then people are wanting to run 7-minute miles and 6-minute miles and 5-minute miles and so on. And so now we're in a space where, yeah, people are really pushing the envelope. We're seeing the times get, the records getting broken quite frequently. And now there's a sub 2-hour marathon. That's an unofficial time, I guess, but it's just interesting. I don't know how well designed the human body is for, obviously we can run for a long time.
Yep.
But to sprint for a really long time is an interesting thing to try to figure out.
Yeah, definitely. I think my concern with that is you're starting to see this move. You know, super shoes are one thing, right? Like I think if you did everything barefoot, you'd run a lot slower, but you would last a lot longer. I mean, I think mechanically you can only run so hard when you're bare feet on bare ground, right? And I think that would save you a lot of pressure, whereas using
It would act as a governor maybe a little bit.
Yeah. And I think maybe it's comparable to using proper gear, lifting weights, and you know, let me know how that strikes you. But it's like it's mechanical doping, right? I mean, that really is what it is. And whenever you're playing with something like that, you have to realize that there are side effects of doing these things. And so I think you saw a lot of people get injured when they started just throwing on the super shoes and doing all their training in it, just because it's less abuse to your body, or you're training a little faster every day. And so I have my concerns about that with some of these faster times.
Have you had any of those types of, do you use super shoes first? And have you had any of those type of experiences for yourself?
Yeah. I mean, I've been more injured than ever since like the super shoe era started. But I had one race where I was the first person across the finish line in like 10th place or something. And, you know, prize money was 5 deep or whatever it was. And it was not a super big separation. And I was the first person that wasn't in super shoes. And I was like, all right, you have to put an asterisk next to these things. Like this is the times that we're in. And, you know, if they are going to double your likelihood of getting injured, it doesn't matter. And I think that's what you're seeing with carb consumption too, where you're seeing like 400 calories an hour or 500 calories an hour being consumed. And you see the glucose data on some of these guys, and they're doing, like there's a guy in the OCR world that I think he's the one that posted his data. Somebody posted their data, and they were doing a 10K, and like they took a Morton gel, like one of the hydrogels. They took that in the middle of the 10K. And you're like, what are you, diabetic? Like what are you doing here? But it almost is like, it's like glucose doping. You know, your supraphysiological levels of glucose, of all things. And now that we have, you know, we've figured it out on how to really cram more of it into your system, we're kind of entering this era now where like,
got to be talented to be able to eat one of those while you're running that fast too.
Yeah, I mean, I think
I was
it
just
helps.
thinking about like a 5K. Like he must have been flying, and he's trying to like squeeze down this packet. That would
I think it helps having obstacles, right?
Yeah.
Like throw it in at the end of an obstacle or at the beginning of an obstacle, because
Yeah.
then you can kind of like let the heart rate recover. But you're seeing these guys that are they're rolling around with 200 plus 250 glucose levels, which your body doesn't like being that high, right? Like your central nervous system really doesn't like that. I think that's why you had like eye issues, right? It's like your central nervous system's really, it doesn't like elevated glucose levels. So if a guy like me is cruising around at like nice, healthy longevity glucose levels and fueling just the minimum for the exercise, and I'm getting trashed by guys that are like crushing 400 calories an hour, that's a tough spot to find yourself in, right? You're like, well, how bad do I really want to win? Like, is this a science project?
Should I do what they're doing?
Yeah, exactly. And it really is. It's the same question with like any kind of performance enhancing intervention of any kind, where it's like, how much of my mechanical stability do I want to potentially trade for 4 minutes off my marathon time?
Power Project family, we appreciate you checking out this clip. Check out another one. Just go check out another one. Or comment down below and let us know what you liked about this one. But we love you guys, and we're going to keep bringing you the heat. So comment, subscribe, and all that good stuff, okay? Peace.